Hello there. Welcome back once again to the Vaults Remastered. Today's episode, we're going to continue with our basic training here in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the Remastered Rules. I am looking at the 10th day, the 10th action. That is basics, stuff that you can do on your turn with one of your 3 actions, or stuff an NPC can do, stuff a monster can do, whatever. It's basic. Let's take a look at number 10, Sensing Motive. We have another secret check with this one. So secret checks, I mentioned this one in the last video. This is where the GM rolls the die for you. I know that is controversial in some circles, but I think it makes sense, especially in the sense motive. Anytime you as a player wouldn't know the information, your character wouldn't know if they sensed the motive correctly or they did the seek action correctly, that's where the secret rolls come in. So the GM just asks you for your modifier for whatever role it is. They go ahead and make the roll behind the screen or off the camera or whatever it is. And then they narrate the results. They're not going to tell you if it was right or wrong. That's up for you to judge. Now that gets a little bit tricky, especially here in the sense motive, especially if other players around. So how do you adjudicate that? How do you say, hey, this player saw something, didn't see something, understood something, etc.? As in multiple roles involved. Who knows? That's what this little talk will get into because there is some extra information in the GM core about that. It's also another one of these concentrate traits, so that just means you have to have the mental faculties in order to pay attention long enough to sense a motive. So anything game-wise, mechanically, that you could imagine might disrupt somebody's brain patterns or whatever it is, they won't be able to sense motive, or their sense motive might be off. You can maybe see that adjusting the DC up or down based upon this concentration trait. All right, so let's take a look at what it actually says. It's a one action, and it says you try to tell whether a creature's behavior is abnormal. So that's one of the key things here is behavior. You're not trying to sense language necessarily or words. It's behavior. So choose one creature. So one. So this is where one way you could adjudicate this. Maybe one of your characters is studying one person, somebody's studying another person that's next to them. So you choose one creature, you take this action, you're studying the behavior. You're looking for odd body language, signs of nervousness, other indicators that this creature, whatever it is, might be trying to deceive someone. I also will kind of throw in here my take on this a little bit is also I think you'd need to be able to determine expressions or be at least on the same biological scale in order to indicate sense motive, right? If it's some sort of construct robotic, featureless robot, would you be able to sense its motive if you're a flesh and blood creature? In my opinion, not. Or if it's some alien aberration from another world, would you be able to sense its motive? Maybe the DC's higher there, or just maybe you can't. I don't know. Maybe there's greater chances of failure, critical failure. Who knows? So it goes on to say that the GM attempts a single secret perception check for you and compares the result to the deception DC of the creature. That one's a little bit weird because it implies that the creature's trying to be dishonest or somehow hiding what it is that they're thinking. Is that necessarily the case? Is deception the only DC here? Maybe. Let's think about it. So you're checking against the deception DC, the DC of a spell that's affecting a creature's mental state, or another appropriate DC determined by the GM. So yeah, maybe there's some other number here that you can think of. Off the top of my head, I don't really have one per se, but again, maybe in this case of where it's an alien creature or some sort of construct, maybe it's not deception then because it's not trying to hide anything. It's just your familiarity with it. So maybe it would be occultism, perhaps, if it's some otherworldly spirit or nature checks. If it's something not necessarily humanoid, that might work for this. I don't know. Just some stuff, or not checks, but the DCs. All right, so going on from there, it says you typically can't try to sense the motive of the same creature again until the situation changes significantly. So you're taking this action, you're making the secret check is getting made for you, you get the information conveyed to you by your GM. You can't then just go, I'm going to roll. I want you to roll again each turn. There has to be something that's changing the status quo significantly enough that would warrant another check. So just a typical asking another question doesn't mean you're automatically going to sense motive again. Maybe if you suddenly pull out the bloody knife, is this yours? That might trigger another check because you're throwing something dramatic out there. So this is a kind of a cool action as far as role play goes. I think with this one, I think you can have a lot of fun with this action if players are cool with it. GM, you're able to kind of go with it as well. All right, then we've got our varying degrees of success. So if you get 10 or more above the target number, whatever that is, you get a critical success. You determine the creature's true intentions and get a solid idea of any mental magic affecting it. So this is a little bit, I think, misleading, or maybe not the right wording. Their true intentions is the better of the two words here. True doesn't mean that you understand the truth of what they said. Oh, that's a lie. That's true. That's false. Whatever. It's more you get an idea of their intentions. Again, it's that body language. It's that behavior you're trying to read, not their words or the truth of their verbal stuff. And then the other idea here is the mental magic. So if there's some sort of spell charming, let's say the creature, you can see where that would give you, hey, this guy's under the influence of something. I would also throw in there under the influence of toxins or chemicals, pharmaceuticals, alchemy, drugs, that sort of stuff. I could see that being something else you could get, perhaps use sense motive. I don't know, maybe that kind of falls into the medicine side of things as well. But how do you know if to make a medicine check unless they seem to be acting strangely? So that's where I think sense motive could be useful in that situation as well. Success, you can tell whether the creature is behaving normally, but you don't know its exact intentions or what magic might be affecting it. So this just is they're off, right? And the thing about this though is this kind of also argues the point that if you don't even know the person too well, how can you sense their motives, right? If it's just somebody you just met, it's behavior wise. Yes, you can say, yeah, they don't seem to be acting normal, but normal in a generic sense, not normal for that person, unless your PC actually knows that character pretty well or that creature. Failure, you detect what a deceptive creature wants you to believe. If they're not being deceptive, you believe they're behaving normally. So this one's a little bit weird. You detect what the deceptive creature wants you to believe. So I think that means you believe the lie if they're being deceptive. Why not this just doesn't say that? Why do we got to do this inverse language here? You detect what a deceptive creature wants you to believe. So you believe their lies. That's the way I'm interpreting that. If they're not being deceptive, you just believe it's normal for what they're doing. Again, this is kind of a little weird because the only reason you're probably doing a sense motive in the first place is because you think something's off. So there's the GM saying, oh, you not going to say you failed, but no, they're acting normal. But if if you know the character, this NPC already, and they're acting weird, that was why you rolled the sense motive. So failing, right? Like, oh, they're acting normal. No, they're not. That's why I asked to do the sense motive. So this gets into that whole, verisimilitude stuff. You're going to have to buy into this role play. And that's all the reason why I think the secret check is important here. If the player character was rolling in the open and they knew they failed, and then you're like, oh yeah, you believe everything you're saying, the other people around the table are like, oh, I'm gonna roll, right? No. So that's where the secret roll I think is important here. Critical failure, you get a false sense of the creature's intentions. So that could be, now this is again maybe a little misleading, because if the creature is deceiving you, the way this kind of words is, oh, you get a false sense. In other words, you're not believing their lies because you're getting the false sense. I think it just means that you're believing whatever the GM can make up whatever they want at this point with a critical failure. That's the way I would read that. So there is a lot of, adjudicating here. There's going to be a lot of role play here. There's going to be a lot of, gray areas you can kind of think about and see in this mishmash here. So I think if you're going to get into some sort of role play scenario where a sense motive check might be in the cards, I think as a GM you really have to have some solid, NPC notes or personalities, goals, that kind of stuff in mind, so that you can role play this better if your players can detect the lies, misinformation, etc. Otherwise, you're going to be, maybe given away too much that you shouldn't. All right, so that's the basics of this action. Now, what else do we need to worry about? There is some adjudicating, as I already mentioned. So a couple things here. In the GM core on 28, there's a section about the sense motive, and this gets into something I've already said, which is it's not some sort of lie detector system. So sense motive, when someone tries to sense the motive of an NPC, you'll need to figure out how to convey the information they receive. This is what I also was just talking about, having some good notes for your NPCs. So if you know some sort of social encounters are coming up, it really makes sense to have some decent personality traits or whatever, or secrets, that kind of stuff that these NPCs know, so that you're able to role play into this scenario here. So it's best to try to convey any information that is, determined or not determined by the PCs taking these sense motive actions, describing it indirectly. So body language, the way they might say something, word choices, they're maybe sweating or looking around or having a nervous twitch or something like that. It's much more, you know, uh, visceral, I guess, or more just realistic to describe that than to say, oh yeah, they're acting funny, right? They're not behaving normal. Although it does suggest that sometimes you can drop that punchy, oh yeah, they're definitely lying. Because that then makes that kind of, yeah, that critical success. The player then realizes, yeah, I just critted on that bad boy. Although I could see a crit fail kind of being the same thing. Oh yeah, they're telling the truth. I mean, you don't want to be sarcastic about it, but you perfectly normal. I mean, you've known this person since you were kids. This is normal for them, right? So you can have to use your judgment on this one as a GM as to your own emotions you're going to be putting out there. You also might need to determine when the situation changes enough for someone to try to sense motive again. So you can sense motive more than once. Probably not on the same turn, I would think, unless again maybe one of your actions is to throw the bloody, murder weapon out on the table. I'm asking you again. Third action, I'm going to sense motive again. But it could happen later in this encounter. So if you're having, maybe it's encounter mode, maybe it's exploration where it's a 10, 20, 30 minutes. You're maybe shopping or researching or investigating, whatever you're doing. You got multiple minutes or hours with a person, that might give more than one opportunity to sense motive again. This also where it could be fun and use that secret checks to your advantage, because if the players keep getting different answers each time, they might not know which way is up. So you could have fun with this as a GM. And you also might just allow by default your entire party to kind of make a sense motive. If the whole party's coming up and they all have the same idea, we're going to interrogate somebody. Then you could simply, if somebody says, "Oh yeah, sense motive," you can say, "Oh hey, everybody can sense motive if you want to, get a sense of what this person's up to." This then gives you a whole pool of data that you can mess with. Hey, well, okay, five PCs want to make this check at the same time. Cool. Now you're rolling 5 times, behind the screen. Now you've got a whole mishmash of things you could throw out there. Oh yeah, you think he's telling the truth. You think they're sweating. That person, you're picking up this. Is it the same stuff? Is it something weird? Is it different? Is it, conflicting with each other? That could make the whole scenario crazy. That talks about that idea as well, that, the behavior of the subject needs to change enough for it to require another check, some new evidence, something out of the ordinary. And then if another PC tries to sense the motive, gets different information about the target and shares it, that doesn't count as new info for that other player, but it could give that whole cool, fun role play that you can let the players argue about who's telling the truth or not truth. And again, it's not truth telling, it's just, are they noticing things or not? And you might even want to use private messages for something like this, right? Like if you're playing through Discord, or like I play over Zoom, I might send a direct chat message to a player after I do the sense motive. You think this. Johnny, your character thinks that. Susie, your character thinks that. And send multiple different messages and then let them role play it, right? Why should you make it easy on them and, set it up like that? Just boom, throw it out there. They want to discuss what they got. That's up to them. They want to keep it close to the vest. They don't have to say anything. All right, then the other last couple things here is, I haven't mentioned this yet, but it was talked about with the actual action, is you're targeting the deception DC. So I want to mention that as part of this. How do you figure out skill DC? Shouldn't be skills PC. Should be, oh sorry, PC that's player core. So in the skills section of the player core 226, there's a little, section in there about how to determine skill DCs or just DCs in general. So whenever you're trying to figure out deception DC, perception DC, whatever it is you're targeting with your skill check, in this case, the sense motive is a skill check, perception. You're targeting, let's say, a deception DC. How do I figure that out? It's real easy. It's 10 plus that target's skill modifier. So that would be charisma in the case of deception. Or if they're maybe trained in it or something like that, they might have a higher modifier. So take a look at that number on that NPC stat block or on that creature stat block, and it's 10 plus whatever that is. So it might be something low. It might be a 12, all right? It could be something high, 18, 19, whatever. And then you're doing those secret checks behind your screen and seeing if you hit it or not. All right, then the secret checks, already mentioned this a couple times, but there is the section in there about secret checks as well. I think this is also in the player core. So sometimes the whole rationale for those of you who don't believe that this should be a thing, but here's the rationale that the Pathfinder book puts out there. And, I agree with this. I don't have a problem with it as a GM, having secret checks. It is what it is. So sometimes you won't know whether you have succeeded at a skill check. If an action has the secret trait, the GM rolls the check for you and informs you of the effect without revealing the result of the roll or the degree of success. The GM rolls secret checks when your knowledge about the outcome is imperfect, right? This makes it actually easier to roleplay. So if you're a player kind of upset with this, think about it this way. It makes your job easier. You're just getting raw information. What you do with it, that's raw roleplay, right? You don't have this thing in the back of your mind knowing, oh, I just rolled a 2, so I know whatever they tell me is not true. No, you're just giving information. Go with it, right? And this also allows you as a player character to kind of use your previous reaction or interactions, let's say, with that creature or that NPC, and your memory of these situations, your notes about what happened before. Does what you're being told now jive with that stuff or not? So you can kind of get your own indications of truth or falseness. So GM's rolling these checks when you don't know the outcome. You're searching for something hidden. That was like the seek action. You're attempting to deceive someone, so that would be like the sense motive here. Translating a tricky bit of ancient text, remembering some piece of lore. This way, you as the player don't know things that your character wouldn't. This rule is the default for actions with the secret trait, but the GM can choose not to use the secret checks if they'd rather just some of the rolls are public. Right? So it's up to you as the GM how you want to handle this, but there is the secret trait for a lot of these things. And that's just something you would bring up to your players, probably session 0 sort of thing, or just as these things pop up in game. Hey, this is what we're doing, how we're going to handle it. This is why we're doing it. Just trying to help with the role play. You don't know the exact result. You can obviously have more than one person make these checks. So if you're unconfident in your own abilities with your character, maybe someone else also helps to make these checks. All right, that is the end of the sense motive action. It was probably one of the most straightforward ones of the batch so far. So again, if this is useful information for you, go ahead and like the vid, subscribe to the channel, comment below if you have any experiences with the sense motive or you agree or disagree with the whole secret role type of thing that Pathfinder presents. Let me know what your opinions are. In the meantime, have yourselves a good night and peace out.